Hey Alex,
Hi, good evening.
how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Just tired, but I'm good. I'm good.
A lot going on.
Yes, it is. A lot.
Hold on.
Oh, you let your hair
Say that
grow.
again. I'm sorry I had that feedback with the YouTube um, sharing. So that was that echo that we heard. But it looks like it's still working. Sorry that happened, Tess.
Oh, you good.
Thank you to everyone for being so punctual this evening. Let's let a couple more CBRC members join. I appreciate everyone for being on time. This is great. We'll just give it maybe one more minute. Hey, let's go ahead and kick off. I see many of our committee members were able to join us. I'm sure other folks will trickle into this space as we go through the evening. So let's go ahead and kick off. This is our first engagement this school year, looking towards developing the budget for the next school year and engaging with this community committee along the way. So let's go ahead and get started with some introductions. We do have new members, including student members and a new adult member who was appointed by the board for a 3-year term, with our 2 student members appointed for 1-year terms. So I'm really grateful to be in this space with all of you. I think I can go ahead and kick it off with the introduction, and then let's go ahead and popcorn around the room. I'll track and see who hasn't gone yet, if we need a little support, keeping a mind on who hasn't been able to introduce themselves yet. But I'll go first, and then if I'll call on one of our attendees, you can introduce yourself, and then also share this other information. How long have you been on the committee, and what was your favorite subject in school? So we'll popcorn around the room, and I'll kick us off. So I'm Alexandra Martin. My pronouns are she, her. I am a program manager on the finance team in the finance division at PPS. I support a lot of different projects, but especially support the CBRC and the budget development process. I'm the main staff contact and staff support for you all for the CBRC. So look out for communications from me as we go through the process together, and always here to help and answer questions. I've been supporting this committee for several years. Last year was my first year in as the main staff support for the committee. And my favorite subject in school was English language arts. I love poetry and reading and writing. So that was always a bright spot for me that part of the day when I would get to be in my English class. So I want to pass it over to Caitlin. Caitlin is one of our new student members.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, obviously. I use she, they pronouns, and I just joined the committee as a student member. And
Caitlin, your audio, can other folks hear
is it
Caitlin?
messed up? Oh no. I don't know what's wrong with that. I'm sorry.
Caitlin, I'm able to hear you just fine. I don't know
Maybe
if
it was just me. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, Caitlin. I can hear now.
Is it okay now? Okay, sorry. But I go to Benson, so my favorite class is my major classes, so digital media production and photography.
Caitlin, would you want to call on one of your another committee member?
Jen, are you okay with going next?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Hi, I'm Jen Gray O'Connor. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been on the committee for this is my 2nd year. Like Alexandra, my favorite subject was also English, and I loved the chance to get to read midday. And with that, I will pass it to Nathan.
Hello, I am Natan, he, him, pronouns, and I'm from McDaniel High School. This is also my first, student committee member year, I guess. And my favorite school subject would probably be psychology. We took that AP psychology last year. It was, I think, one of the best subjects I've ever had. And for this year, it's going to be speech and debate. You learn a lot about speaking and philosophy. So that's kind of my interest, but yeah.
Natan, do you want to choose someone to go next?
Yeah, I will choose Aaron, Mr. Aaron. That's okay with you?
Thank you. Yep, I'm Aaron Cronin. My pronouns are he, him. I just was on the board last year. So this is my 2nd year. And my favorite subject in school, strangely, was physics. I didn't know I'd like it until I was in it, and then I realized at that point it was probably too late for me to even go that way. I hadn't had the math. I guess I will go with Stefan.
Hello, my name is Stefan Lindner. He, him, his as pronouns. I have been on the committee for 3 years. What else? Oh, just FYI, I need to step off in 5 minutes or so to get my daughter to her basketball practice. So that's my other commitment. And favorite subject in school, I think I said history last time, so I'll stick with that. Like really history. Next one is TAS.
Hello, my name is Taz. I've been on the committee. This is my second year. And my favorite subject in school, I was always a geek, but I'm more like math and science stuff. Yeah. And is that it, or is there someone else that needs to go? I have no idea.
If you look at the participants, you can see everyone. Our new committee member, Mignana, hasn't gone yet.
Hi, I'm Mignana Bishop, pronoun she, her. This would be my first year serving on the committee, appointed for 3 years. And definitely my favorite subject in school was performing arts. I had the pleasure of going to Da Vinci Arts Middle School. We didn't have PE, we had to do art, dance of all different genres. And then I had the pleasure of attending Jefferson High School, where I also performed in dance and later became a dance teacher. So I love my math, my reading, writing, all that stuff, but the dance definitely stood with me throughout my life. I'll call on Sonia.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Sonia, and this is my third year in the committee. And favorite subject, I really actually like algebra a lot. I don't know if I remember it, but I remember I liked it. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Oh, I see Mr. Cruz.
Hello, everyone. Mr. Cruz here. Um, how long I've been on the committee here? I've been on for like 3 years now. I think two years or three. And my favorite subject in school was African American literature.
I think Mariah hasn't gone. I'm not sure. I can't see everyone in my screen how I have it displayed right now. We can get back to you, Mariah.
Hi, no, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of an unstable connection right now. Yeah, hi, I'm Mariah Hudson. I was the co-chair last year, and I just want to say to everyone who's new on this committee, feel free to ask lots of questions. We have a big job here to do, but I think it's one that's really worthwhile. Favorite subject in school is probably political science. So something I'm still engaged in a little bit on the sidelines. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. I think that rounds out our committee members. I'm just scanning through, and I don't think anyone else has hopped on. So Juno, would you want to introduce yourself now?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Juno Chang. I'm the Senior Budget Manager. I've been with PPS 9 years this December. And before that, I was with Reynolds School District for 5 years. And my favorite subject in school was creative writing. How about you, Myung?
Thanks, Juno. Hi, everybody. Great to be with you all. Thank you for all of your service on this important committee. So my name's Myung Lee, and I'm the interim chief financial officer for PPS. I've been with the district team for about a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half. and worked for many years in San Francisco schools and a few years in DC public schools before that. And I will join the English language arts crew among us. I would say that was one of my favorite subjects, some years more than others, but I remember the good years really, really fondly. And I think that's it.
Love it. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone sharing here. So we do have a pretty robust agenda. I shared the content with you all this afternoon. So you should have a PDF that you can follow the link to this PDF and see the content. It's also presented on the CBRC website as a public-facing document. So we want to cover a few general housekeeping topics with you all first and start to orient to some of the upcoming decision points that CBRC will go through together. And then we want to provide a pretty brief and high-level Budget 101. We will get more into the details as we go through the process, but wanted to set the stage for upcoming conversations. We also have information on the budget context for the upcoming 25-26 school year. So that will be shared this evening. We also want to spend the bulk of our time in an activity or an exercise to hear from this committee about your priorities. So those are the topics that we'll go through together today. Kicking us off, in terms of housekeeping, we have, we're going to engage on the budget over the next several months. And so we want to hear from our committee members what topics you think would be important to cover this year. This will evolve, and we also want to make sure that you know how you can request topics and ask questions. So I'll speak to that first, but while I'm going through that, please start to think about any of these topics that you want to share with the group or test with the group, or any questions that you have about agenda setting for CBRC. So if you have items or questions and you want to make that known, you can email me at any time. If you want to just directly email me, that's a really good way to get in touch. And if you have a question or you think that there's a specific area that we should share more information about. So an example might be the special education budget or program, or another example could be a new grant that you heard about, maybe the early literacy grant coming from the state. So if there are some topics or questions that you have that you think are relevant to the CBRC report or relevant to budget question you have, go ahead and email me with those. I'll also create a Google form link for any more specific questions that you want an answer to, and that will help us keep track of all those questions. But I'll go ahead and pause there. So this is the question for this group. What topics are important for CBRC to learn about this year?
Is this a question you're posing to us?
Yeah, I'm posing
Okay.
it for discussion for this group. Do you have a response, Erin? I have a little more voiceover if it helps.
Yeah, I will just say that my experience from last year is we spent a lot of time very high level talking about what the budget was kind of in it. And then when we actually got the document, it was so fast. And when I looked at it, it made no sense to me. And so I I don't know what we can do to get ready for that. But that was kind of my takeaway was by the time we got the budget, I was like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. So I didn't feel helpful.
I recall the feedback definitely was well taken and well understood. It's a really complex and dense document, a complex and dense topic. So we do want to be more proactive in providing the information that will help understand the document. We will stay pretty high level early on, but that was heard loud and clear. Mariah?
Yeah, I'll say when in our last budget letter, which I think we might touch back on, we called out a number of areas, of concern. Special ed was one, instructional coaches were another, just kind of for example, where we felt like we either needed more data or we had concern as a committee. So for me, it would be a priority to look back at those areas. Those were areas of either investment or divestment by PPS, and see whether that continued investment, and I'm just calling out, for example, instructional coaches is getting the returns, the anticipated returns, because that was an area where we were kind of looking to see how that was aligned with board goals, right? And that's the mission of our committee is, are these things, is the budget that's being proposed aligned with board goals, and how can we get the most for the dollars, right? As it's being proposed. So I would look at those things.
Thanks for that comment, Mariah. I agree. So we, I think as in terms of next steps in this, we can go back. I like that suggestion. We do need to start developing these agendas and these topics that will engage monthly, and over the next couple of months. So I can review those areas where CBRC wanted to hone in on and send out those for some feedback from the group, especially for our upcoming January meeting. What would be most important to touch on at that time? Any other thoughts? Yeah, Mariah.
Insofar as we might be advised by PPS's kind of government relations team, looking forward as things are coming through with the legislative agenda. At this point, I'm sure PPS well knows what they're going to be asking for. We won't necessarily know what we're going to get. But kind of forecasting what are the areas of potential investment, and where would those be? Where are we looking at? We're looking at shortfalls at this point. Where are those cutbacks likely going to be? Kind of thinking about those as a through line in our conversations this year, even as we're talking at those high level overviews.
So for some context for anyone who might not have missed it, Mariah's referencing PPS has a legislative agenda. I did send that out to everyone over email, but it's been several weeks. So that would be something that would be great to review if you need a little additional context about the legislative agenda that PPS is pursuing for this biennium. There any other thoughts on this right now? This is not the last conversation that we'll have about this. This will come up as we start to plan meetings for the next couple of months.
One thing that I was personally curious about, and I was wondering if we would be able to talk about it more, was sort of what Mariah was saying about talking about the cuts and where we think that we will be ending up cutting. Or PPS plans on cutting, because I know we have to make pretty big budget cuts this year, if I'm correct, maybe. But I've been kind of curious for a while about where exactly we plan to make those cuts.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, I just noticed that Adrielle was able to join and join just a little bit late. But I would like to circle back to you, Adrielle, if you can hear us. The rest of the committee introduced themselves already, but would you like to take this time to introduce yourself? We do have a few new members, and it'd be great if we could have an introduction from you.
Yes, hello and greetings. I apologize for my tardiness. Work ran a little later than I thought it would. My name is Adrielle Person. Pronouns are she, her. I've been on the committee for a year, and my favorite subject is funny because I went to Benson and I was in the health OC, but I did not like the CNA. So I ended up opting out of that and doing childcare my senior year. And I think that that was probably what catapulted me to youth service, just being in space with little kids and seeing the wonderment in their eyes and the ability for the world to just be brand new and sky's the limit. So I still try to operate with that when I deal with youth. That's still my goal, to make sure that all youth have the feeling of value and knowing that they can be whatever they decide they want to be. And that's why I'm here. That's why I volunteer, because I want to make sure that the opportunity presents itself in a meaningful way.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your why with us. And thank you for hopping on late, and this is great to have you. So we did already touch on agenda setting. If there are topics and questions that come up, please email me and we'll work to embed them in upcoming agendas. We'll work to bring other PPS stakeholders and subject matter experts into the committee space, and you can ask your questions directly of those folks in this space. So the next topic that we wanted to address in terms of housekeeping is to see this as an upcoming decision point for this committee, CBRC leadership. So our Community Budget Review Committee structure has varied in different years. Sometimes we have co-chairs, we have vice chairs. In this most recent cycle, we had 4 committee members in leadership. So Taz and Mariah worked as co-chairs, and Grace and Stefan worked as vice chairs. So that group works with me to develop the agenda. I share materials with them ahead of time, and they take a leadership role in terms of facilitation in this group, and especially when we get to our so the CBRC deliverables to the board and working towards having consensus or documenting any divergence, characterizing the divergence, or sharing with the Board of Ed, presenting to the Board of Ed. So those are some of the specific activities that CBRC leadership works on. And is there anything else, especially from our leadership, current CBRC leadership, that you would want to mention about the opportunity?
I'll just speak as having helped serve in that last year. I feel like it was helpful to have a diversity of opinions, whether and I guess, you know, kind of where we're all leading with this is our final product, for those who are new, is really recommendations to the board. A review of the budget, the superintendent's proposed budget, and recommendations, you know, where that is in alignment with the board goals, where we feel like we need more information, where we have questions, where we feel like it may not be in alignment. So that's, you know, a final report. It's been, you know, a dozen or more pages oftentimes, and it is, you know, some pretty in-depth and quick work. It all this pre-work and many months of meetings, so that when we get, you know, a couple of 250-page budget documents, we can, as a committee, go through those take sections, weigh in, and break out the pieces that we need to make those recommendations. So I feel like it benefits from a diversity of opinions. We've offered one document, and, you know, unanimously in the past years, past 2 years I've been a part of this as a committee, but recognized, you know, different opinions within that. So I do feel that having, you know, multiple folks on leadership, not just a chair, is beneficial. I would welcome folks to step up as.
Yeah, seeing it in, from my point of view, in your staff support role, it does seem like there is quite a bit of lift, and that our CBRC leadership does often take on, um, um, I would say, a little bit more in the background than other CBRC members. So I think it does create a little bit heavier of a lift for the leadership members.
I've been saying this for a few years, is that I want to get to an opportunity where we can evaluate, because that's one of our duties and roles, is to evaluate programs and provide recommendations. So I would love to get to a point where we can really view the potential cuts. So I know we have some huge cuts this potential budget year, but I'm just curious to know if we can have information way in advance to really be able to really analyze and evaluate, and come up with a solid recommendation for the budget, instead of, the small window of time that we have to review the budget. It's not really effective, but if we can, you know, get engaged with the conversations, the different things that are happening before the budget is even created, that'd be great.
Right, and that, Mr. Cruz, that resonates with Aaron's comment earlier in this session around the volume of content and the complexity of the content. So I think it's, we're hearing that more comprehensible summaries and programmatic change descriptions might be needed and
Right.
earlier.
And I have to go. I have parent duties. I have a recital to go to tonight, so I have to take off. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for being on here, Mr. Cruz. We'll see you next time. Taz, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. In alignment with Mariah and Karanja, and to I'm sorry, what was his name? Who was like what was his name that was kind of like confused about the whole process of what this is about as far as what we do as a committee. I will say to you, hang in there. And I do think that we do need to have something where it's kind of like a crash course. I don't know who's on board with it, but I was thinking about that. That something that is easy to understand and just get the gist of what we're trying to do as a committee. And as we do with the budget reviews and cuts and everything, that people who are new who don't really get it, which is not a bad thing because it is a lot. I was thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe do like a little crash course on just the basics of what's happening, just to have a general idea of what's going on and what's behind the scenes and how we operate as a group. That's what my thoughts about it.
Thanks, Taz. I think we're going to I hope we'll be kicking off pretty strong, and our aim is to start high level tonight and then get more into the details as we go through the process together. So I think we can touch on when the committee would like to vote. So this is kind of a part of agenda setting. In multiple prior years, the committee has waited a few meetings before voting, but did ultimately have leadership decisions in place and have a vote prior to the work that's focused on the local option levy review and the CBRC proposed budget review. So that's how I've seen the timing play out. So that might mean that we're voting in January, that we're voting in February. So I wanted to test that with the group and see what your thoughts were around when you would like to take that action to vote for new leadership.
Will we be looking to fill 4 spots or just 2?
Thank you for clarifying that. So we've had different numbers and configurations of CBRC leadership: chairs, co-chairs, and vice chairs. So it's varied, and it would be to be determined based on the CBRC's direction.
I mean, I think I know who I hope is going to want to be a a chair, but I think it would help for us to kind of get to know each other, maybe one or two more sessions, and then get a sense of who wants to do what, at least. So probably early January then. Is that how that would clock out?
We'll only, right, if we voted in January, that would be our next meeting. So it might end up being February if you'd rather have a little bit more time to get to know each other.
Can we defer to the next meeting?
Sure. I think that makes sense. We can touch on this and recalibrate in the next meeting. That sounds good. Okay, great. So that concluded housekeeping, but like I said, if you have questions along the way that are more oriented to where do I find information or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. So we want to share just at the very highest level CBRC's charter and operating guide as we kick off the work. So you can see the CBRC's mission, and included in the PDF I sent you are these links where there are more detailed documents. So the charter spells out the mission for CBRC. Our committee's charge is to review, evaluate, and make recommendations to the Board of Education about the superintendent's proposed budget, as well as any other issues identified by this committee or by the board. It's an advisory group to the board. So this is a committee that reports to the board. And the structure, CBRC is composed of 12 members at this time, with our 2 student members as well. Our adult members are appointed to 3-year terms and may serve up to 3 terms, and students are serving for 1 year. So our 2 student members' terms would conclude at the end of this school year, our fiscal year, June 30th. Aaron, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just thought of a question. I don't know if this is the time to ask it, but throwing it out, I'm curious to know if, because I saw the wonderful document that we actually delivered to the board, were there any adjustments made to the budget that were a reflection or in response to the advised, our recommendations? Do we know?
We do. We could know if I pulled up the documentation. I'm actually not remembering right now off the top of my head. But Juno and Myung, do you happen to remember if there were any CBRC insights or recommendations from the proposed to the adopted?
I don't need to drill it. I think it might be helpful for us though, if it's easy to get to at some point, or yeah, I don't need it answered right now, but I thought it would be educational for us to see what impact we might have had.
Yeah, I think we should follow up from this meeting with maybe a quick email, sort of summarizing the specific changes that were made. I think that's a great suggestion. Great question, Aaron. Thank you.
Thanks.
And before we move on to the other content, were there any other questions about mission or structure? Okay, and if not, we'll go ahead and move along. And thank you, Aaron, for that question. So we're going to go through, like I said, both a budget 101 and a budget framing or context for our upcoming school year and what we're planning towards. And I'll kick us off, and Juno, Myung, and I will take these slides together to share information. Erin, you still have your hand up. Was that okay? Thanks. So our budget conversations and planning are grounded in our why as a school district. Our mission is to educate all children to their highest potential, to be productive, respectful, self-reliant, and responsible citizens who value the richness of diversity. That's PPS's mission statement. And along the way, we have developed a vision for our students, and it's articulated in PPS Reimagined. This content is included in your PDF, so please feel free to click through if you want more details on this, if you haven't happened to have seen these documents before. But our vision lays out educational system shift, educator essentials, and a graduate portrait that provides our North Star for what we're hoping to achieve. And forward together is our roadmap to achieve our vision. So this is our strategic plan for racial equity, inclusion, and excellence. It's organized into 4 themes: racial equity and social justice, inclusive and differentiated learning, professional excellence and support, and embracing change. This strategic plan was adopted and is the roadmap for our work through 2025. We also simultaneously have Board of Education goals. These Board of Education goals are focused on eliminating opportunity and outcome gaps. The areas of focus are 3rd grade reading, 5th grade math, 8th grade readiness, and high school graduation. CBRC's charge is to evaluate the proposed budget, to understand alignment and share perspectives on how the budget that's proposed aligns to these goals. This is our planning cycle that we follow. There could be some, subtle differences that happen each year depending on the context that we're operating in, but generally this is the cycle that we follow. So budgeting is a continuous process. We operate on a fiscal cycle that goes through from July through June. I'm going to start with the fiscal new year. So fiscal new year means we're implementing and monitoring the budget that was recently adopted. And at the same time, we're conducting work to analyze prior year expenses and do accounting to close the prior fiscal year and audit the prior fiscal year. That happens in about July through September, although sometimes the audit does continue into further months, and it culminates in the release of an annual comprehensive financial report, which shares our school district's prior year spend and other analysis. Starting in fall time, we have budget awareness. And so during that time, we're sharing information with the board around our planning, the cycle that we intend to follow for the upcoming year. We adopt a budget calendar. If you click through the link to this budget calendar, you're going to see the specific dates for this planning cycle. So the engagements that are happening, that started happening in fall and will continue happening until we adopt the budget before June 30th. And the specific required milestones are included there. So our board will adopt a budget calendar. Our finance division will forecast, our finance division with our research department as well will work on a forecast for finance and an enrollment forecast. We'll be conducting a needs assessment. So that means scanning our environment to see what some of the critical needs are. We'll be engaging with stakeholders during that time, both internal and external, in sessions like this and other and focal group engagements where we're engaging with PPS stakeholders, people who receive services, students, staff. So that that engagement really kicks off in fall. In winter, January through March, we're in a budget planning phase. So we're finalizing priorities that will flow into the proposed budget. We're implementing the workforce plan. So this means specifically school staffing will play out during that time. Principals will consider their local needs and start to staff their school. And the district will and the Board of Education will conduct budget outreach. So sessions like this, but other listening sessions and opportunities as well. And in April through June, we start to have some of our required formalized sessions that are required as part of our process to adopt the budget. So we have work sessions with the board. We have, including a work session that includes CBRC as well. The superintendent will release a proposed budget in late April. CBRC will produce your report on local option levy review, and then the review of the proposed budget for alignment with district goals. The board will meet to approve the budget. There'll be a public comment session and a hearing. And then the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission will need to certify the budget. And following that phase, it can be adopted, and the budget must be adopted by June 30th. I'm going to pause in case there were any questions about the planning cycle. Okay, hearing none, I want to pass it over to Juno to take the next few slides.
Our budget, it's our plan, and it's how we plan to spend our dollars to achieve our mission and vision, informed by our values. And the concept that you'll hear a lot is building a balanced budget. So what does that mean? Oregon budget law states that our resources equal our requirements. So our resources include our revenue. Those are the dollars that we bring in, and also includes our beginning fund balance. And those are the dollars that carry over from the previous year. Our requirements are going to be our expenses. So everything that we spend our money on to try to achieve our mission, as well as our reserves. So those reserves are include both our ending fund balance as well as our contingency dollars. So in the general fund, we tend to budget contingency instead of ending fund balance because we're a large enough district that our reserves may, if there were a catastrophic event to happen, we may need to tap into a large amount of dollars to kind of help cover those costs. So we keep our dollars in contingency in the general fund for that reason. And then we vary in contingency or any fund balance in our other funds. And next slide, please. Thanks. These are our 5 major funds. And so our general fund, our special revenue fund, debt service, capital projects, and our internal services funds. But I said major funds because within each of these major funds, there are numerous funds within them. The general fund, this is our operating budget. So this is the bulk of our dollars that we're going to be spending on our kids. It primarily comes from property taxes, our local option levy that we passed recently, as well as state sources like our state school fund. And our general fund revenue is, for the most part, unrestricted. That means we're free to spend it on what the district deems necessary. And our special revenue fund, it supplements the operating fund. These are dollars that come from local, state, and federal sources, and they are restricted. We have to spend them in a certain way or towards a certain goal. For example, our nutrition services, we have to make sure that those dollars we spend on nutrition. This also includes Head Start and special education dollars, our title programs, our integrated grant programs, which includes the SIA or the Student Investment Account, high school success, and CTE programs. This also includes programs like DART and Columbia Regional Services. And so together, the general fund and the special revenue fund give us an idea of all the expenditures that go towards our schools and our programs. We also have the debt service fund. Oh. The debt service fund pays off our debts. Capital projects funds, those are how we modernize schools, as well as upgrading technology and our curriculum adoption. And then our internal services funds, we are self-insured as a district. And so our workers' comp, our property and liability insurance, as well as our unemployment is held there. Each of those major funds needs to be balanced within itself. So again, resources and requirements need to be balanced. And then overall, our budget needs to be balanced. Next slide, please. And we do get a lot of resources from various sources. And so these are the major resources that we get from for our general fund and our special revenue fund. And they vary between local, state, and federal sources. The green ones indicate the general fund sources, and the size of the bubbles are pretty relative to the amounts that we get from those sources. And then the blue ones indicate our special revenue fund. So as you can see, our general fund, a huge bulk of our dollars come both from our state school fund as well as our property taxes, and the local option levy is a pretty sizable chunk as well. In the next slide, this is a pretty good representation of where we spend our dollars. So in the general fund and special revenue funds, about 50% of our dollars are spent on direct instruction, and then another 40% on support services. Those support services vary from all kinds of support services for students that are directly impacting students, things like social workers and counselors and instructional coaches and so on, as well as a lot of like professional development for teachers and other instructional staff, and also covers any operational costs. So like operations and custodial services and finance and HR, payroll, things like that. And then you can see that our split of like fund balance and contingencies between the two funds is relatively small. In the general fund, we do hold a contingency of between 5 to 10% of overall revenues. So those dollars are meant to roll over to the next year to help pay for any costs before we start to receive our New Year's revenues. And so they kind of help us float the first couple of months. Any questions? All right. I'll pass it back to Young.
Great, thank you, Juno. And for a little segue, I'm gonna be talking about our current budget context, just to take all of that general information that Alexandra and Juno shared and walked through, and focus a little bit more in the next couple minutes on our current situation in terms of our budget and what's coming up ahead in the spring for the process to develop and for the board to eventually adopt the budget for next year. So this is focusing more on current events, if you will. So, and returning CBRC members have heard some of this. This will probably sound kind of familiar to you, but just to ground us all with a bit of a common understanding of some of the drivers. So we have three buckets that are illustrated on this slide here. The first bucket has to do with rising costs. So inflation has been increasing a little more slowly over the last year or so, but in the not too distant past, we had pretty significant increases in our costs and just in the general economy. And then here at PPS, we did invest pretty significantly in compensation for our employees. Very important for recruitment and retention. Uh, Obviously, I think everybody knows we had a prolonged strike, teacher strike last fall, and uh, the agreement that we reached with teachers, other employees later on last year have been uh, meaningful in terms of the pace of increases, pretty significant increases in compensation. Pension costs are also increasing really quickly for the next 2 years. So this is sort of a newer issue. And I don't know if folks might have heard about this in the news, but if you haven't, I'll just say that we were uh, very, we were and are, we still are concerned about some recent news that we and plenty of other districts, most other districts in the state got about a month and a half ago about really sharp increases in contributions that districts, including PPS, have to make for pension costs over the next 2 years. In the meantime, our student needs continue. Um, and we are still trying to make up for the impact of COVID and the years following in the outset of the pandemic, learning loss, higher chronic absenteeism, need for wraparound services continue. So we have seen some increases in revenues, which is really important, but those increases are not enough to keep pace with the pace of the increases in our expenses. And specific note, this year is the first year, the year that we're in now, is the first year that we have no resources from the federal COVID relief funds, which we had for about 3 years. Last year was the last of those years. And so we're adjusting to the new normal of those funds having expired. And then finally, we are still gradually declining in our enrollment. And we've had faster decline in PPS's enrollment just proportionally than the state as a whole. So this is an important trend to keep our eye on and to try to change. Frankly, I know one of Superintendent Armstrong's main priorities is to do what we can to retain and attract more families and students in PPS to continue to make the case and demonstrate the great program offerings that PPS schools continue to offer and to spread the word that PPS is still a great place for families and students to get a great education. So to try to move the needle on that pace of declining enrollment. The next slide is a little bit of a closer look. You can sort of see this trajectory, this pattern of our enrollment declining over the past few years. And you can see, you may be able to say it's a little hard on this, the way this is scaled, but there was a faster rate of decrease in the first couple years of the pandemic, in the first 2 or 3 years into the chart there. and the rate of decrease has slowed down a bit, but if you kind of squint, you can still see there's a little bit of a decrease, a downward trend in that chart, even though it's kind of become a little bit slower. That the rate of decrease has become a little bit flatter, but it's still trending down. And that dashed part of the line just indicates that we are projecting that trend to continue. So not a drastic, steep drop, but a continuing gradual decrease. And the last bullet point there just states that some of our expenses, although some of our expenses do decline a bit with student population declining. So if we have fewer students, there is an effect, at least to a degree, in the need for classroom teachers, for example. But plenty of our expenses don't really decrease in proportion to our enrollment decreases. So it's not a one-for-one relationship. So here's a little bit more information about the gap that we're estimating for next year. So we're in December of 2024. So we're kind of at the beginning stages, but we are expecting, as has been mentioned in this meeting, a second pretty tough budget cycle in terms of the need to find some more balancing strategies. And most of those, frankly, will take the form of expenditure reductions, unless there's some improvements in revenue projections. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we're looking at a gap of about $40 million, which is about 5% of the current general fund budget. And this is very consistent with what we thought we would see at this time last year. So we had about a $70 million imbalance between our revenues and expenses that we identified, probably around this time last year, and we made about $30 million of reductions for the year that we're in now, for the 24-25 year. And we knew, or we expected at that time, that we'd have another 40 million or so in reductions to make next year. So taking a 2-year period to bring our revenues and expenses into balance. What happens after next year is important. At this point in time, we are we're hoping that this $40 million of cuts, if we need to make them for next year, that'll make most of the progress we need to align our expenses to our revenues. However, even if nothing else changes, our enrollment decline will likely continue to require some gradual reductions in following years. All right, and then I think I've got one more hopeful topic to share, and I think a couple of folks mentioned this earlier too. I think Mariah and then Alexandra commented on this at the beginning of our meeting. The Board of Education did pass, I think this was in September or October, they did pass what's called an advocacy agenda. And and Alexander circulated this to everybody by email earlier, but you can also find it in this link to this slide. So it has a lot more details, but just at a high level, there are specific elements of this document that the board discussed and voted on and unanimously approved, that basically says, here's what PPS and the PPS board and by extension the PPS community is seeking in terms of support for adequate funding, first and foremost, for our students' needs in the next budget development process that the state goes through. So for folks that may not be familiar, the state of Oregon passes a comprehensive budget every 2 years, or sometimes known as the biennium. So for every 2 years, every 2-year period, or every other year, they take a they have a comprehensive discussion about the budget priorities and how much money they expect to have and how they will allocate those funds across all of the different needs that the state has to consider. And of course, education, pre-K-12 education, we think should be, at the top of the list. And but it also has to be considered alongside many other types of priorities that the governor and the state legislature has to balance. And so in that process, we are going into a new biennium. So the year that we're in now was the second year of the current biennium. Now the doors are open for the governor and the state legislature to really take a fresh look at budget priorities for the next 2 years, and for interested community members and interested organizations to weigh in to try to make the case as well as possible, as effectively as possible, for funding for, in our case, for our students' needs. So all of these points, there's a specific case to be made, for general funding for schools, investing in high quality education. There's a specific term of art called the current service level, which really sets the basis for our general core funding through the state school fund. I'm not going to go through each of these points one by one, but there is a specific case for each of these bullet points. And if you care to look at that legislative agenda document, then you can see a few more details. So the broad takeaway here is the $40 million gap that I mentioned from the previous slide. That's what we're working to address based on the most recent information from the state, including from the governor's budget proposal that was released just a couple weeks ago. And we are at the same time hoping to make the case to influence the revenue picture so that it's better than what's than the assumptions that we're using that go along with that $40 million gap. So I think Mariah mentioned the CBRC's potential role, or CBRC members' potential role in helping and contributing to this advocacy effort. And that's I think really well taken, and I think very welcomed by the board, among others. So there's going to be advocacy opportunities, visits to Salem, or opportunities to write letters, send emails, and such. So please stay tuned for more word about that. It's really intensifies in the spring as the legislators hold their hearings and such. So with that, I will pass to Alexandra to talk about engagement some more.
Thank you. So we're, as we go through this process, we shared the graphic that shows the cycle in budget planning. Well, budgeting is a continuous process. Community engagement is also a continuous process, and work at the school district. Our programs are engaging with their communities all the time, consistently, to hear feedback and understand insights and their experience in our programs and schools. And so as part of this engagement cycle, and planning the next school year's budget, community engagements have been really critical. It's a critical part of developing our budget that minimizes negative impact to student success. And we've been engaging in many different formats. We've been asynchronously online through surveys and in-person engagements, virtual engagements like this one. So we did have a community survey as an example and a highlight in the work. The community survey was deployed in November and was online for about 1 month. It did close at the end of November, but those insights are being analyzed at this time, and we had multiple thousand people respond to that, and that will be critical in understanding community priorities as we go through the process. Principals, school leaders have also been engaged through the process. They're especially well positioned based on their work directly with students, directly with teachers and other support staff in the schools to let us know what's working and what's not working and what we should prioritize as we go through the budget process. We've also conducted interactive engagements with focal groups. So, for example, students who are enrolled in migrant ed or our career technical education students and families, special education families. So different groups have been engaged in virtual meetings. We've been engaged in person throughout the cycle. And those insights and feedback are being captured and organized and shared with leadership so that they can hear those insights as they're making decisions and proposals through the budget planning process. An upcoming activity will also be an educator town hall as we look towards winter. And so on that note, I would like to pivot us to a priorities discussion with this group. So like I noted, we've been conducting a community engagement in a lot of different settings, and this is a really, really key setting where we need to hear insights to inform and flow into the conversation around prioritization. So as a school district, we do have a number of areas that we could focus on. And this is an opportunity to hear what you think should be prioritized. So our goals in engaging like this are for our CBRC members to share insights about what areas are most important. So that's that prioritization and your perspective on the district's strengths and opportunities for improvement. So both of those areas will shed light on, hopefully shed light on what the CBRC priorities are. So to start to get a little bit more into the details, this can be a really challenging conversation, and prioritizing activities can be challenging, right? We could focus on a lot of areas, and all of these areas are important, right? So the question that we're asking is, which of these areas do you think is most important for the district to focus on over the next 3 years, and why? So I'll provide a little bit of voiceover for these items that you see in the list, but as I'm reading through those, if you can start to think about what area you might want to highlight as important for us to focus on and why. But I'm going to go ahead and read through the different options that we've presented here. And if any of you took the community survey, this is actually really well aligned to that. And so that's purposeful, and that can help us hear from different groups in a live setting with more context and see how that might compare or contrast with what we heard from the general community that responded to the survey opportunity. So student achievement is one of our areas of focus, and this includes the support that helps our learners attain their educational goals. Diversity and inclusion of all students. This can include specialized instruction or in programs or initiatives that are designed to improve outcomes for historically underserved students. Classroom instruction refers to teaching that takes place in the classroom. Really, a large majority of our activities and expenditures could be focused in classroom instruction. Hiring, developing, and retaining the best staff. This includes our human resources activities like professional development, as well as strategies that might promote retention. School climate and culture. This refers to the school environment. It can be the relationships, attitudes, safety elements of the school. Physical facilities. So this is the sites where learning occurs and services are provided. Community partnerships. Our school district engages with many community partners to deliver services, to build relationships, to enhance engagement, and to provide additional support. So these sometimes could be culturally specific community partnerships that support focal student groups. School leadership is an area like leadership roles, principals, assistant principals, vice principals, and student activities and extracurricular activities. These are engaging activities for our students at individual school sites. It could also be our out of school care that's provided in different settings. So before or after school care could be something that falls within that category. I think first, are there any questions about it? That might be a good way to kick off. There were any questions about what you see on this list, or any clarifying questions about what I'm asking? Let's start there.
I kind of want to share. I've had several thoughts going through all these slides. I'm not exactly sure where it will fit in the category, but what I'm hearing is that we need to get more students involved. And COVID has definitely played a big toll in that. Not only for I'll just put it out there, mental health is very serious in the schools. I'm a mother with 3 children. I advocate at the schools. I'm up there, I'm hearing from the parents. I created an affinity parent group, and there's a lot of concerns around the children and teachers connecting with children over the years. Things have changed. Um, Old school, kids may be greeted with a hug, can't do that anymore. So being able to not, I'm sorry, I'm in a meeting, being able to not have those connections in those ways, I know plays a really big toll, but more importantly, trainings. A huge necessity for cultural responsiveness, trauma informed. We have a lot of diverse students now, and traditionally they have, especially I work in early learning at ERCO. So I see it all the time where a lot of families, when they get to the US, they don't really want their children to engage in school settings because where they're from, they keep them home until they're about 8, which really it really plays a toll when they do get put into the public school system. So maybe I'm just venting because I heard so many things at once, but I just know mental health, not just for the students, but for the teachers as well. Um, I know there's some schools that have those partnerships with telehealth, and over the last year or two, they've kind of dropped off. One of my concerns was budget. That's kind of why I got involved. And I was like, what can I do to help and advocate, not just for myself, but the families that I see? Billing seemed to be an issue. I don't know if when children are receiving counseling services, why they were being limited and not being able to receive more than 1 day of support, maybe 2 days a week, however long those sessions were. It seemed like billing was an issue. Then I also seen on one of the slides that healthcare, I know insurance and our politics will be getting brought up very soon, but my idea was that billing directly to the families, if they have it, insurance could help. I don't know if that's already being done, but I see that some of these things may have to be addressed as a wraparound. because the goal is to get more students and families, you know, in the public school system. And then also so everybody feels supported. And I know one of the biggest feedbacks I always hear is safety, all inclusion, and feeling welcomed. And I don't know if it was COVID that did that, that kind of took that away from us and kind of fogged up some of our kids' interactions and even the teachers. But I would like to grow more on these topics to kind of figure out how to solutionize, because I don't think it's one, two, or three. I think it's a collection for what we're trying to solve. And we may not be able to solve it this year, but I'm just kind of seeing past experience to current experience. And I just wanted to share. Sorry, I was all over the place. That was a big tangent, but I just wanted to put that out there.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I hear a lot of good themes and prioritization coming from you, Manana. Thank you. There any responses or your own perspective around areas of focus for PPS?
I have a thought, a question of maybe trying to tie this back to the declining student numbers. I guess my question is are we seeing the declining numbers that that are correctable are related to parents choosing to put their kids in private school? Is that where we're losing children to, or is it just numbers in general going down in the population?
I think it's a little bit of both. Um, we definitely have seen in the past couple of years some increased choices in some families, a slightly higher proportion of families making other choices outside of PPS schools, um, and that I think has caused some of the dip in our enrollment. And there are also demographic trends about fewer school age children living in Portland, and projected to that trend is projected to also continue with smaller, they're called cohorts, small, fewer babies being born um, in Portland. And so it's a little bit of a combination of factors. We really, for the projections, we rely on researchers, demographers from Portland State, and they do a great job of publishing reports that really describe each of the factors that they've both seen historically, recent past, and then forming the basis of their forecasts.
Mhm.
So I'm just kind of I'm giving you a general answer that it's a bit of all of those things. But their latest report, I think is really good in terms of speaking to which factors are driving um, the degree to which each of these factors is driving the trend and will likely continue to drive the trend. I don't know, Juno, if you have more to add. I know you work closely with Sarah and Sean, our colleagues, in these enrollment numbers.
Yeah, just like Myung said, and you, Aaron, you're kind of spot on in that there are a lot of additional kind of options that are popping up. So like charter schools, private schools, virtual schools, students that are being homeschooled. So a lot of students are kind of taking alternative routes, as well as because of real estate prices and rent prices going up in the Portland proper, people are moving their families out into other areas. And we're not the only district to face this. The majority of Oregon districts are facing this issue, and it's kind of collectively hard to pin down exactly which one is like the main cause.
So I
Sonia,
guess
oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, so I'm just thinking to tie this back in is, if part of the solution we're trying to achieve is drawing people back into public schools where, we're already paying the taxes, if somebody's going to shell out a bunch of money to send their kid to private school, then what is it that's happening at the public school that they aren't happy with, and what can we prioritize? And if that's something, if that is a goal, is to try to be like, hey, look, public school's fine, it's great. What are the things that we should prioritize to make that so that they're not making that choice, to entice people to come back to the public schools. And so that's, I don't know which of these would be the driver for that. I'm curious to know if we have any survey data on what parents are saying when they're choosing or private school. I certainly would prefer not to spend an absolute fortune on private school for my children. So I have vested interest in keeping the public school strong.
I'll just weigh in here with in terms of budget priorities here. I see a whole list of things, but student achievement, particularly looking at graduation rates and not just simply whether students are meeting kind of their mean, you know, year over year, what we're anticipating for them, but whether they're actually making progress. And classroom instruction, whether looking at class sizes, looking at improvement, looking at school improvement year over year. I would like to see that, and physical facilities, whether we're able to make any progress on maintenance, which has been a multi-year priority for this committee. I'll just note there are a lot of other great things in here, but those to me are the ones, well, three of, I would say, the five that are most closely tied to board priorities.
Sonia, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. One is about the school enrollment, just to piggyback on what other people were asking. Was there a significant difference between the projected enrollment numbers for this school year, those from the demographers at PSU, and the actual enrollment figures, the fall figures? I'm curious. And then two, would it be possible for someone in finance to offer perhaps a review or where the cuts were made to be able to get to the 30 million for the group to understand, particularly for the new members? Specifically, I think it's important for us to understand what areas or programs were reduced from both the district level and also at individual schools or at school levels. I think that, to me at least, understanding what took a big hit last year, to say in a way, will be important for me to understand, like what happened, how did we get to the 30 million? I was wondering if we can get a little bit of education on that, or a reminder, a review on that piece as well.
On your first question, Sonia, about enrollment, enrollment is ever changing, as you probably know. Our estimates that we have for enrollment from year to year, we kind of have a low, medium, and high scenario that we base on. This last year, we came in a little bit higher than what our midline was. In previous years, we have seen that when we come in higher than our estimate, it starts to drop off during the year. And so, like right now, October, November kind of time frame is usually when we see the highest number of students. And then as they do start to drop off of that list. So, but for this year, our enrollment is probably about our mid-range right now. It did come in just a little bit higher at the beginning of the year, but it's probably right about where our middle estimate was, our middle scenario.
wanted to recognize your other comment, Sonia, around understanding the the reductions that were implemented in our current school year. So I just wanted to acknowledge that you stated that. And I think there's also a nexus with the question earlier in this meeting around the CBRC report. So it might make sense to share that information in context with the recommendations that were in the CBRC report to see where there is that alignment. I think both in terms of reductions as well as where there were programs that were maintained that might have been emphasized by CBRC. So wanted to recognize that, and I think that would be great to address in an upcoming meeting. Any other thoughts or wonderings, prioritization, Stefan?
Yeah, just want to kind of reaffirm, like, the student achievement one seems high to me. I want to say two things about it. One thing is that a lot of the other one seems to be instrumental for that. So classroom instructions, school climate, this is all part of what actually leads to achievement. I think we often look too much on the scores or like the tests, but like this is much broader. And I think if you put that up, a lot of these things need to be in place for students to be successful. I think what Minyana, hope I said this right, emphasized this right in there as well, right? I mean, this is all really, really important for students to have a place where they feel can learn and where we feel like where behavioral health needs can be met and so on and so forth with the absolute necessary parts of it. The other reason why I think this is important because it's a school board goal and we've been tracking that for the last couple of years in terms of like how the budget has supported that goal. One thing I want to emphasize with that the goal doesn't just state overall achievements, but also states reductions in achievement gaps. And I think that would tie the second one into that as well to some extent. It's a little bit separate, but I think like we can't separate student achievement from looking at the distribution of achievement and reduction in achievement gaps.
Thank you, Adrielle. You've been waiting. Please go ahead.
I concur with what the rest of the team has said about the priorities being interconnected. I think one of the most important things that I see as I go into schools is the lack of diversity in the staff and the need for sorry. I just have to tell because she's on a meeting. Sorry. I think that intersects some of the other challenges that or opportunities for prioritization. I think that I've seen where student achievement is growing in PPS when I look at the end of year report cards and things. And so what I do know is that we are making some strides. I just feel like we need to make sure that when we're talking about student achievement and their experience, which doesn't seem like the experience of the youth, I mean, that we include identity and representation. I know specifically for African American and Native American youth, I still struggle to see representation in a meaningful way across the district. There are some schools you can go to where there is better representation and where African American male teachers do exist. But I think when we're talking about disproportionate outcomes and we're talking about achievement gaps, if we're really going to prioritize those things, we need to look at the milestones that are really causing, or not milestones, rather, the big issues that are contributing to some of the student achievement issues.
Are there any other wondering? I had stated initially that this could be difficult to prioritize or state areas of focus. If there are any wonderings or questions or maybe even specific opportunities or challenges associated with the prioritizations that you've heard so far. For anyone that we haven't heard from, right, yeah, Nakan, you had your hand up first.
Thank you. And yeah, I agree with a lot of you guys. Like student enrollment, as you know, as you guys were discussing it and just talking about it, it seemed like the biggest problem because in the future and in the present, because it's kind of like applied to a lot of our future plans or future goals, and especially or at least what I kept thinking was the fact that we kind of need to get a little bit more information on the factors that we can control so that we can get student enrollment up, because since a lot of factors that are intersecting connect to this issue, and there's many factors in that section that we can control, so maybe looking at like specific schools, or I don't know, looking at what kind of plans are working and what kind of not, so we can actually improve it on a whole district wide basis, because I think that's most important. If we just go into one thing thinking it's the best thing, but we have, I guess, no data behind it and specific data behind it that we don't know yet, it might not work as the best. And also, I think one of those areas that we kind of need to focus on is student activities and extracurricular activities. One of the attraction of like private and like charter schools is the fact that parents can make their kids focus in a special area, or I guess like something that they themselves can really a part of, the parents and the kids. So they push their kids into that. They pay this exorbitant amount of money and time into this. So the more we kind of allow our schools to host different specialities, the more diverse students we can have in terms of color and in terms of future. And I think, yeah, that should be also a priority that we can do. But yeah.
Thank you, Natan. I hadn't heard anyone else elevate that, but coming from our student, emphasizing student activities and extracurriculars is meaningful. Caitlin, would you like to jump in now?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to point out as a big priority for me would be staff retention, because talking to people over the years, like as budget cuts are made, one of the main things that is felt throughout schools is when staff is lost, when teachers are lost, and support staff as well. Um, and just talking to a lot of people, somebody mentioned earlier, like um, students connecting to staff. And I think that is really important in keeping students in school and also just supporting them in like basically every other way that they can be at school. I mean, the staff defines basically their school experience. And so keeping staff and also diverse staff who can relate to a lot of different students around, and prioritizing keeping staff over even some other things, because the staff can sometimes fill in those gaps because they have such a strong connection to students. I think that is a really important part of this.
Thank you. I appreciate those insights. We do have time, I think, on this to just continue to sit with this question, over time as well. So as the work evolves, if it makes sense to get back to this conversation, I think that would be helpful. If it's been really insightful to hear from everyone so far. I'm just noting who we haven't heard from. There are a couple of folks, and I don't want to call on you, but if we haven't heard from you yet, feel free to chime in
I
now.
will, Alex. I was just sitting back and listening to everybody, and for the most part, I am in agreement. My thing that really concerns me with the budget cuts, the ones who will suffer the most, and that is the underserved. That really bothers me. You know, um, they're gonna be like shorthanded in the long run versus short term, and I just think that's disconcerting. You know what I mean? How has this gotten to this point where they always have to suffer, as far as the cuts? You know what I mean? Every child deserves an education and a good one. That's all I have to say on that. That the student activities, more programs out there. I know it's about money too, but where is the equalizing? You know what I mean? More so, dealing with those types of students, it bothers me. That's all I have to say about that.
Can I add something? Because I forgot to say, I also feel like regaining trust is it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time, and it was out of our hands. And I don't like to say it over and over, but COVID did do a big number on us with that one. So, there are a lot of families in the community that have lost trust, and you also have some children that put a lot of fear. People didn't know if they need a shot, if they need to go to school, if they need to. So a lot of the youth have decided, I got to get out there early. And I am interested in seeing the graduation numbers in comparison to a few years back, because I do feel, from what I've observed, is that there's a lot of youth that have been eager to get out there and get employment and just start finding their own way. Um, Also, just the financial struggles of wanting to help support their families. That has, when I was younger, I graduated in '05, and that was already a thing back then. So it does make me sad as well that these cuts affect families in such a deeper way. We won't have, like Nathan has said, we're not going to have all the solutions, but we should focus on the ones that we can control for sure. But trust, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, I'll just speak up now. And Alexandra, I appreciate the invitation to speak up. I think there are so many good arguments for each of these priorities. Like, they're all very important. But what I would be really curious about is kind of an argument from, the district. Like, how do each of these priorities fit into the overall goal of achieving the vision and mission for the organization? So, we know we can't really funnel funds into each of them. So if we are in a situation in which you're having to look at a reduced budget, like, which of these areas create opportunities for change? Like, where are the levers in which we could affect change for our school district, and because, again, we know that they're all important. So how does the next budget really help us focus and prioritize each of these?
Thanks, Jen. I think your comments and Mariah's comments sounded like they were pretty in sync around wanting to understand kind of the potency of some of these possible investment areas in terms of how they'll drive towards student outcomes. Okay, let's shift our focus to the strengths and opportunities. And I think it would be okay to take this holistically to make sure that we hear from everyone in the time that we have left. So what I mean holistically is I'll read these two questions. Let's give some processing time. But if it makes more sense for you personally to respond to both of them at the same time, feel free to frame your answer in responding to both of them at the same time. Or if you would rather state your response to one of them and then hear what other people say and jump in again later, that's totally fine. So it's your preference. But what, in your opinion, is the single, sorry, actually, sorry, I couldn't see that. What, in your opinion, is the single most positive aspect of this school district? And if you could change one thing about the district, what would it be?
I'll share. I've already said it, but in my opinion, the most single positive aspect overall in the Portland Public School District is that it's so diverse. And that's just really great. You don't see that everywhere. And then one thing that can improve is knowing how to work with diverse children and staff. There's a lot to be learned there. So it's like we have a situation where they're already there, and then so it'd be nice to be a more acquainted on knowing how to work and understand, be more culturally responsive and well-rounded.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think that was really brilliant. I think what's positive about the district is its commitment to DEI. And I know as a parent of a trans kiddo, the commitment to inclusivity, as imperfect as it is really laudable and I think unique in this moment. One thing that I would change is, we're a district that can't be everything to everybody. So the prioritization of where we can make financial investments now and then into the future is going to be a really critical conversation.
I agree with what was just said about diversity being the best thing about PPS. I think that there's so many different types of people all over PPS, and I also agree with the fact that we need to improve on supporting all of those different types of people and different types of students that want different types of education and that need different types of people to be teaching them. Yeah.
I don't know if we should just be jumping in here. I guess I would say that the classroom instruction is, from what I've seen, in our area, has been good, very good, and I think that's pretty much why we're here. So, um, I appreciate that, and I like that where that has been, and I just continuing to support that. I think through class size and support for the teachers is critical so that they can have the time and space to accommodate some of the people that might need more attention.
Yeah. I agree with all of you, especially on on the diversity part. I don't have a lot of comparisons in terms of schools, but I have found, at least in my experience, the district to be diverse in not just like races and stuff, but in background, in opportunities, in futures that people I guess get into, and it's quite amazing to see, because there's a lot of people who want to go into different stuff, and I think PPS tries to do their best, maybe not their best, but tries to do an adequate job, which I have found quite good, to create those opportunities for people to grow in classrooms, outside classrooms, extra activities and all that, which I participate upon. So I think, yeah, it's a very positive aspect of the district.
Yeah, I have to agree. Try, they do a little. Um, Needs improvement, just like everything else. And if one thing I could just a lot of things, but one thing, the budget process. That's one thing that I would change. Just revamp the whole thing to find better solutions. That's all I have to say.
I'll go next. There are so many positive things. Sometimes I feel like we forget the positive and think a lot about the negative. But positive, starting with the staff, with the teachers, with so many people that work at our schools and that make our schools better. This group, the community involvement, there's a strong sense of community involvement throughout the district. So I really appreciate that as well. And then changing one thing, perhaps enhancing the equity and access across all schools. When you think about the affluent schools and those that are that don't have as much resources, I think that the district has made strides in promoting that inclusivity. There are still disparities in access to things, for example, advanced courses, extracurriculum programs, and even technology between schools in more affluent areas and those in lower income communities. That's just my 2 cents.
Running through our list of attendees, I think we have not. Stefan, I don't think that you have shared with us your perspective on strengths and opportunities. Would you want to jump in?
I think I shared my thoughts and priorities.
Okay. Adriel, did we hear from you specifically about strengths and opportunities?
Sorry, I was trying to get my mouse to the right page. I shared that I could see that some of the achievements were increasing like over the last couple of years. And I see with the RESJ priorities that there is an intention to move the needle with diversity and inclusion. I think that there's a lot of work to be done in both of those areas. I think that to Mignana's point, coming off of the pandemic has not we haven't recovered in a meaningful way in terms of social skills, in terms of mental health impacts. And so I think that's definitely an opportunity. And I think when we get our finger on the pulse of some of those things, the things that we can control, that's going to help us realize some significant increases in some of the opportunities that are listed here as priorities.
Right. I think across a lot of these, there's some obstacles that we would have to overcome to make some of the changes or improvements that were described here. So unless there are any final thoughts on this, I think we can close out the session, but I'll just give it just pause for a minute in case there was anything else or any wonderings that surfaced for you. Okay. And hearing none, I think we can start to pivot toward closing out our session this evening. It's been incredibly helpful to hear the perspectives from CBRC. It's really important that we're listening to communities and community insights, hearing perspectives as the district works on budget priorities. So like I said, we're engaging with other groups as well. So feedback we heard tonight will be combined and collected with other community groups, including those focal groups that I described. And these are all flowing together to inform the decision making that's happening at the district. So more to come on that and more opportunities to engage, of course, especially for CBRC as we look towards upcoming meetings. So if there are no other questions for tonight or any other comments, usually we look to CBRC leadership to close out our meeting. So Mariah or Taz as co-chairs, would either of you like to say a few final words and close out our meeting? Mariah or Taz, are we adjourned? Any other further thoughts?
Oh no, I was like trying to find my mic. Sorry. No, it's been really informative and insightful. I don't have anything else to add. Everything was awesome.
Okay, I think we're adjourned for the evening. I thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'll be in touch over email with our next meeting date and looking to schedule that in January. So in the meantime, let me know if you have any questions, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Minyana.
Good night.
You guys have a blessed night.